give us your definition of negotiated curriculum?
Sure. So negotiated curriculum is a process that involves kids brainstorming questions and concerns they have about themselves, questions and concerns they have about the world, and then using those as a foundation of their thinking towards coming up with themes for units, for projects, for a class, for a team. So it could be so many different things. The model comes from James Bean. The model that I've used has been adapted from the work of James Bean. And he really, we've stayed pretty true to his model in the sense that kids would develop 10 questions they have about themselves and the world and bring those into groups. So working in groups of about 5 or 6 peers, they would look at their questions about themselves and look for commonalities. And what they would see is that it was really affirming that their peers had very similar questions, mostly about, when it was about self, it was about physical appearance, future, what am I gonna be, what, will I go to college, why do I look the way I do, why do I have these fears? When it was about the world, they also found a lot of similarities, and they could easily see the themes around conflict and change and the big questions that kids really care about that we don't often allow them the time and space to really explore. So negotiated curriculum involves them posing their questions, validating their questions, and then having them work together in groups to come up with common themes that they can extract from their questions. Once they have those common themes, then they can use those to map out curriculum using learning targets or essential questions, but always referring back to their really important questions. So would you like me to talk about the way that I used it? Or,
yeah.
Okay, so after our students had worked together to share their questions and come up with commonalities with their self and world, they would use those commonalities to then extract a theme. And the theme would be something big like revolution or change. So lots of ideas and thinking and learning could be done under those themes. They would then brainstorm different possibilities that could connect to that theme in humanities and science and math. In their project, the personalized project block, which was really the bulk of their PLP work. And then they would share that with the team. So they would present their theme to the team, and there might be, let's say, 8 to 10 different groups. They'd share their themes. Then we use a process called democracy. So, in a democracy, we rely on having conversations and negotiating based on the needs of all the different individuals. And in this case, as a teacher, I need to negotiate with my students because I know there's things that we have to do, and there's the things that they would really like to explore. And those are their have-tos. And so this idea of negotiation and democracy represents what, hopefully they will realize is a really important part of being a citizen in their own community. So they vote on a theme, we have a winning theme, and then that really has been the driving force for their personalized project work, which is connected to their PLP. Negotiated curriculum, the process that we use to come up with these large project themes, was just what the driver for us for personalization, the PLP, proficiency-based learning, and flexible pathways. And we were just doing it before we actually knew this was a thing, before it actually was a thing that was mandated by the state of Vermont. So kids were setting goals based on the personal, academic, and career-related goals that were connected to their projects. They were then demonstrating their learning, so the proficiency piece, in many different ways. So kids were deciding on their pathway to demonstrate their learning, whether it be exploring solar energy or coding or a craft or a performance piece. Everyone could access the proficiencies through the structures that we put in place for their project work, but what it was looked very different. So that's where you get the flexible pathways, and that kids could really be inspired to follow their own passions and interests and still connect back to those proficiencies, the have-tos. The benefits are huge. Engagement. The students, that I worked with lived for this process. It was like how we start our year was going through the negotiated curriculum process, and we got to the theme, and they just knew that like when we got to the theme and we validated the self and the world questions and they spoke their who they are and what they care about, then they could dive into the stuff that really mattered. And sure, we integrated those same principles and pedagogies into our other core areas, humanities and science and math. But that project block was their block, and they lived for that project block. And if anything was going to impact the schedule, it better not be the project block going away that day. You know, it could be anything else. I think they would give up lunch and, you know, recess for the project block. And I think it was the first time that I saw really authentic, you know, from a variety of different types of students. Like kids could be so engaged that they just lose track of time, and they're just lost in their learning and thinking and collaborating and doing, and they're asking for more time. And yes, it might not look like kids sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher, but the learning that was occurring was so much deeper than anything that would have been happening with them trying to listen to a teacher, just talk at them. So the benefits of engagement, I believe with engagement, academic performance increases in all areas, because you want to be at school, you're engaged, you feel better about yourself and your learning, you feel better about yourself as a learner, you're being validated, you're getting this feedback that, you can do this, and I believe in you. And so academically there was growth. And then socially, kids were working with kids that they didn't necessarily, they chose a particular topic, and peers might have chosen that topic too, so they ended up collaborating and learning from each other, and those would not have been the peers they necessarily would have chosen to work with. And strong friendships and bonds and community was created through the project work.
What advice would you give to someone who's interested in implementing this, and what would your ideal first year look like?
Yeah, so the advice would be is that it's a continuum. So the negotiated curriculum process can happen at the unit level in a classroom to the full-blown personalized project PLP level. There could be a level beyond. I don't know that one because I haven't done it. But for me, when I was given the opportunity to really disrupt the system, we went full on. So we just went end of this, continuum, let's blow it up. But what I would encourage for someone who's feeling like I want to do this and I'm not sure how to get started is to start with something as simple as maybe your theme or a topic that you're going to be exploring, and asking kids to develop questions about that topic. And then using those questions as opportunities to design learning activities and tasks and projects related to their questions. So I think at that level, you're honoring voice and choice, giving kids options for how they develop, show their proficiencies. So it could be even just a unit on expansion or colonization, and you just open it up to actually ask kids what they care about and want to know about, and use that to guide the planning. And then asking kids, for feedback along the way. What would be the learning activities? If this is our end result and we need to demonstrate this at the end, what are some of the steps to get there? What could we do? Who could we learn from? Who are the experts in the community that we can bring in? What are some of the experiences we can have outside of the school building to enrich this learning experience?
Do you have any processes that you've used to design negotiate curriculum for your classroom to keep experiences with students?
Yeah, so the process that we use, and we do have a resource that we created, but it's all adapted from James Bean's work, which is not anything new at all. It's been around for years and years and years. And so we created this process that was, kind of the structures that we used every year. And then what we did was we then used, so that was kind of our framework and our philosophy and our pedagogy, and then we used the structures of project-based learning as the ways to create structure for kids. So kids were not just going and diving into something and, and had no idea where they needed to be or what was going on. There was very clear structures in place. There was ongoing reflection, weekly reflection. There was also a very clear purpose to everything they were doing, and there was mini lessons along the way. So how do you create really strong driving questions? And how do you do good research? And what does research look like beyond just researching on a computer? You know, it's not just sitting behind a computer for hours and hours. And how do you conduct an interview with a community partner? How do you craft an interview? How do you make a phone call, a professional phone call? How do you reflect, you know, and share your evidence on your PLP? And that was really where they had a lot of choice. Yes, we did ask that they share the evidence along the way, but how they demonstrated that was up to them. And then how do you, you know, if you're creating something or doing something or learning about something, how do you then share that with an authentic audience? So who are you going to share this information with, and how are you going to benefit the community in some way? And that was always an essential piece of it, is how are you going to benefit the community in a positive way? So it's not just about you and your learning, which is essential and very important, but how are you going to support your community too?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else that maybe wasn't covered in the questions that you want to share?
Well, the only other thing I would say is that there's so many different frameworks that can be used for negotiated curriculum and project-based learning. I feel like they're really a natural way to blend together along with the framework of Act 77. I feel like it's a really natural way to tie all that together. But one thing that I had a lot of success with the past couple of years is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a framework for students, because it gives them the urgency, the why. Why do we need to address all these 17 goals as a global community? And what are some of the issues that impact maybe not just your community, but other communities around the world? And I feel like that has given a lot of weight and rationale for kids to want to dive into deeper problem solving for their own community.